Thank you so much for joining us. We are here for the discussion of a community tree giveaway and for a tree planting workshop. We are the Whatcom Conservation District and Whatcom Million Trees Project, and we have partnered with the City of Bellingham to provide trees to a couple of neighborhoods in Bellingham, and we're really excited to be able to provide you all with more information. I am Adam Brayton. I am an education and outreach technician with the Whatcom Conservation District. We have Elizabeth Walker, who is a consulting urban forester with Terra Firma Consulting, and we're really happy to have her with us to speak to urban forestry. And we have Michael Fearer here, the founder of Whatcom Million Trees Project. We'll be sharing speaking responsibilities throughout the presentation. And yeah, we just ask that if you have any questions, feel free to add those to the chat as we go along, and we'll answer them at the end. And you may have noticed that we are recording. So if you have issue with that, you can keep your video off. But otherwise, we can just go ahead and get started with the meat and potatoes of this community tree giveaway. So we're going to start with the importance of this program and give a giveaway overview, speak to the trees that will be available, and also how to select them and place them on your property. Go through planting and aftercare and speak to the assistance that's available to folks who are requesting trees, and then open it up to questions. Now, as far as the greater program goes, the City of Bellingham's urban forest plan seeks to increase the number of trees in Bellingham city limits. This is part of a larger program that seeks to expand what is going on currently with the number of trees as well as the canopy that those trees provide. And part of that is a partnership program with community organizations and outside organizations to select and source trees for target neighborhoods. And we are hoping to increase tree canopy in 5 focus neighborhoods as a result of this partnership. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Michael to speak to urban canopy.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Adam. So many of us, when we went to school, we would hear kind of the traditional story and the long story of what trees do for us. And usually the kinds of things that were talked about were trees create oxygen, they, provide habitat, they, filter the air and pollutants, and absorb rainwater. But that was generally about it for a lot of us. And so actually, it turns out there's a lot more benefits to trees, particularly in the urban setting. As you can see from this diagram, there's numerous other benefits, such as, watershed protection. There's, equity issues among neighborhoods, which is in part what this project's to address. There's human health benefits. There's been cardiovascular studies that show how trees in neighborhoods with higher tree canopy have lower cardiovascular risk. That is an association there. There's stream water, benefits and stormwater benefits as well. And because trees will buffer flooding in urban areas, particularly in our new era of more torrential rains that we experience here in the Pacific Northwest. And of course, trees do wonderful things for building up the health of the soil and understory that's below them. Next slide, Adam. So the city of Bellingham is in the midst of an urban forest plan process. They have a draft report. And overall, through LIDAR, meaning aerial radar-like measurements, the city averages about 40% canopy. But as you can see in this map here, by the amount of green in each neighborhood, it really varies quite a bit per neighborhood. And you can see that your neighborhood is kind of in the center inner part there. And it's significantly less. Now you might think, well, okay, that's just the way it is, and maybe our neighborhood's a little less beautiful than some of the others, and that kind of thing. But it has much greater implications, not only related to the benefits that I mentioned in the previous slide, but let's go to the very next slide. It has some dramatic implications for urban heat. And extreme urban heat is becoming a bigger and bigger issue across the world. You may think, oh, that's more of an Arizona thing or something. And it's true, it is a big issue there, but it's also a big issue here. Back in 2021, over 600 people died from urban heat in the Pacific Northwest when we had a very hot heat spell in the summer. This diagram is the first urban heat map that's been developed for Bellingham. And we did it based on more recent LiDAR data from 2023. And we took or 2024, I'm sorry. And we took a more recent summer day from last summer to see what the surface temperature differences were. The recorded weather that day at the airport was 72 degrees. So it was a few days earlier. So, not that hot of a hot day in the summer. But yet you can see in this chart how your neighborhood is more at risk for urban heat. There's a gradient there between the cooler areas of the city at the surface temperature and the warmer areas of the city, like in your neighborhood, of nearly 20 degrees. That's a finding that's mirrored in many other cities as well. So just imagine, this is a 70-degree day that at surface there was, high 80s, low 90s temperatures. Imagine what that would be on an 80s or 90s day. So this is one of the compelling reasons why we want to do what we can to add tree canopy in your neighborhood. Okay, Adam.
Thank you, Michael. And yeah, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Michael, but my understanding is that in the past, these neighborhoods have had a higher amount of urban tree cover, and it's an awesome opportunity that we're presenting to return to that. Um,
That's very
and
true.
yeah, so yeah, what you can expect from this process is um, we have a Google form available on our landing page website that's hosted by Watcom Million Trees Project. And in order to be eligible, we ask that you fill out that Google form. And we just ask that folks are either live in those neighborhoods or uh, are renting in those neighborhoods, either owners or renters. Eligible requests will be able to receive 1 to 3 trees. We just ask that you note your preference as well as your preference for when you would like to pick them up. These are for use on the eligible property. Though that said, if you happen to be on the border of a given neighborhood, you may still be eligible. So it is still worth applying if it's unclear whether you are in, say, the Fountain District or Columbia. Um, the Yeah, and if you are renting, we just ask that you gain consent from your landlord in order to plant these trees. We'll take a moment in the coming slides to talk about the process of planting the trees and selecting those trees and even what trees are available. But just know that technical assistance is available if you happen to have any questions about the selection process or where to put those trees. That is available, as well as physical assistance should you need it. And know that pickups will happen on weekend afternoons in March, and more details about that are in our Google form. But let's get right to the planting, planning, and all the other stuff process. I'm going to hand it off to you, Elizabeth.
All right. Thanks, Adam and Michael. So I got the wonderful job of trying to find trees for this project and had some few parameters that we were running along and trying to find availability in nurseries to make sure we have enough to fulfill all the wonderful requests we're going to get for trees. So one of the guidelines for this for the types of trees that we selected for this in the list is that they needed to be at least 20 feet in maturity, 20 feet tall. And this is just to, further support this increasing the canopy. We wanted to get these trees to be at least that. That's where we can find the real benefits of stormwater, and air pollution and that sort of thing, and even health benefits. So that was one of the parameters. The City of Bellingham does have a tree list of eligible tree species, and so we followed that as well. And then I went out and looked at the availability of stock for the size of trees that we were going to provide. And I will talk to you about those a little bit further when we're looking at the type of trees and to tell you what size we have available. And we really did want to make sure that we were finding trees that were not only going to mature to appropriate heights and sizes, but we wanted to make sure that they were easy to maintain. And so we wanted to make this as smooth and easy as a process as possible by putting together a list of those types of trees. So you'll notice when we go over the tree list, which is part of the form, that we really did focus on native plants. And the reason for that is that they are well adapted to this region. And you'll see that too, is like how they are adaptable when we go over those different species. They also, because of that, being native, they usually require less maintenance. So they don't have the pests and diseases that maybe some cultivated or ornamental species do. We also see a great connection with local wildlife, and we'll talk about some of those with those benefits with each of the trees selected. And of course, these are going to be decent sized trees, and they are great for filtering pollutants and as well as intercepting rain for stormwater management. So if Adam will let me share. So this is the list that is provided for you. And the nice thing about this list that we have here is that not only do we have the trees common name and scientific name on the left, but we give you the range of their moisture tolerance. And you see we do have a lot that they're quite adaptable to a broad range. As well as for light tolerance, whether they need sun or can they also handle shade. And again, we have a nice offering that runs the gamut there. Special qualities, you see in the top three are conifers. Evergreens are conifers. Their special quality is that they are evergreen, they stay evergreen. And so they do provide winter habitat for wildlife or for the wildlife in the urban setting. We also provide a range of the mature height and mature width of the tree. So that will help you when you're deciding on where you're going to not only put the tree, but do you have enough space, and that you will not find after a few years that it's quickly outgrown its space. So that's really good information. We also provide some special features on the here just to give you an idea of what they're looking at, what we have. The nice thing too is that these, when you click onto that, the name of the common name, we do have these info sheets about each of the trees. Gives you a little bit more about their adaptability, where they are grown naturally in our areas, and then just a few comments and some photos just to give you an idea of what kind of the tree's leaves form. And so that will also help with your selection. So like with the shore pine, it is it is a close relative to the lodgepole pine, but it is found next to coastal environments. You'll see a lot of them in Bellingham parks along the shore, even down in Fairhaven and up north near Squalicum Harbor. So we like that because you are a coastal environment overall. And so they do grow very well here. They don't get too tall. It says here it grows to 35 to 40 feet. They are not straight, not like a straight conifer, like a cedar or a Douglas fir. They kind of are, they do little um, they kind of are sprawling in their nature, very irregular. And if there's a high wind area, they do tend to shape like those windswept trees that you see along the coast. So that's kind of fun. It adds some interest to them. We like the shore pine because it does perform well in Bellingham and in our environment. So that is the first plant, the first tree. We put the conifers first because we feel that they provide the most benefit, especially because they do hold on to their foliage, their needles in the winter time. Plus, they are the ones that tend to get larger. So they provide the most benefit for this particular goal of the program. The next one I want to talk about is the Excelsa cedar, red cedar. This is our native Western red cedar, but it is a cultivated variety of it. And it is to make, the nice thing about it is it is a lot smaller than our native cedar. And therefore it's really going to be a nice tree to put on to your property because it's going to fit as well as contribute just as the Western red cedar does. The nice thing too about the Excelsa red cedar is that it tends to hold on to its green color through the winter. I know you probably have seen Western red cedars around the area that seem to look a little bit dirty or a little bit gray. They do get the rust that's happening. I'm not raising my hand. I don't know why that's happened, but uh, the rust in the fall, that's normal, but I like the Excelsa cedar because it is fast growing, but it's a denser variety and it tends to stay green. So don't be alarmed by the tree photo on the right because that is for just the native when we have a much smaller cultivar available for you. The next one is the Sitka spruce. Now, this one, we were able to find some really good trees, stock of Sitka spruce. The only thing about it is that they can get big. So we kind of laid out or listed out the trees based on their size in the conifer area, as well as in the deciduous trees below. So it tends to get much larger and a little bit fuller too. It's not as narrow as maybe the cedar or the pine itself, the shore pine. So we just thought it'd be a nice thing because they are very well adapted to our neighborhood, our region, our environment. And again, don't get don't get scared about this 100 feet tall, 30 feet wide. We know that your lots, the typical lots within these neighborhoods probably do not have the space for just the straight Sitka. So even though it's a very nice looking tree, we don't think it grows that. Seldom does a native grow to its full capacity as it does in the natural area and its native habitat. So we took the size from the city, and they said they would grow to 40 to 60 feet tall. So really nice looking needles, nice cones. They are well adapted to a variety of areas, but they do like more moist, rich soils and maritime environments. They like to be in the fog, in moist places. So we would definitely need to see if that's going to be a good fit for folks, but we thought it'd be kind of fun to have that available. Then we have 4 deciduous trees. They are also in here. They're laid out by smallest to the largest. 3 of the first 3 are flowering trees. The first 2 are very conspicuous flowering trees. So we hope that that will be a nice variety for folks. And I still don't know why I have my hand up. But anyway, so the first one is the Pacific serviceberry. It's also a native. The nice thing is that it does have white fragrant flowers. In fact, let's look at the sheet, the info sheet. There's the flowers. Nice profusion of flowers that do grow and provide berries, which are good for wildlife habitat, wildlife food. And they're a smart looking tree. They're of the smaller variety or a smaller size, but they are good looking and they do have fragrant white flowers, which is great for pollinators. They are very versatile. They can be in disturbed areas, and they are used to stabilize soils in some restoration sites. So we think that they're going to be highly adaptable and easy to be utilized in the urban setting. The next one is the Pacific crabapple. So if you are looking for like a flowering fruit tree, this is what we would recommend of what we are offering you. You see it has very much like apple flowers because it's a crab apple. It is in the same genus. They are a small tree, but they provide these wonderful fruit that persists in the winter. So it's good for providing food for birds in the winter, which we thought was a nice feature. So you can see how the fruit is a nice dual color, the green, red, and it's just a very good looking tree. It does like moist conditions, so it might be important to make sure that we can we cite that or select a good location for those types. But this was, I thought, was a nice offering for folks who would like to have a flowering fruit tree with some fruit. Those also, I think you can even harvest them and make, crab apple jelly. So if you get it before the birds, I think that that's what it says in the thing here. Yeah, if you get them before the birds, you can make jelly out of them. So just like other crabapple trees. We are going to be offering you not multi-stem, but single stems trees for this particular project. The third one is the cascara, which this is one of my favorite native trees. It's a smaller tree. It does have the flowering. The flowers are like a pale green, so they're not as conspicuous as the other 2. But they also do have some fruit in persisting, the dark fruit. But the reason why I like this tree is because of the leaves, the strong venation of the leaves makes them look like it's a smart looking tree, in my opinion, and it is a native. So it's adaptable. It can grow in a wide range of conditions. And so we thought that that would also be a very good offering, an option within the urban setting. So Cascara is one that also is quite high in value for indigenous and others as far as for wildcrafting. So we kind of like to continue that legacy by promoting Cascara in the city of Bellingham. And then our last tree is the paper birch. You see it does, this is from the city of Bellingham. I've rarely seen a birch get as tall as 70. So I probably would say it's more toward the 40 within our urban settings. So paper birch, we like paper birch because of its paper bark. The white, it's either white or mottled brown, I think it says, a darker brown. So people love having that. I like it because it has the smaller leaves. So it provides in the summer, it provides like a dappled shade. It's smaller, so it's like um, a nice, not a heavy shade tree, but it's of the lighter thing, and it has an attractive fall color. So we like that. Um, it is a pioneer species, and so it's tough and it's adaptable. It can grow almost anywhere. So that's the other reason why we chose that particular tree. The only thing that we are concerned about is that it is susceptible. The paper birch is susceptible to bronze birch borer, which is a pest that is here. In fact, it's in Bellingham as well. So we're just really hopeful that if you keep your tree healthy, it will not be succumb to major dieback or mortality. But we thought it was a worthy offering within this project to share that with you. So just know you have those info sheets available just by clicking onto these. I do think that the cascara, as far as like fall color, is also pretty good compared to the Pacific serviceberry or the crab apple. So if you're looking for fall color, but of the smaller trees, the cascara might be a better bet. And I think it's talks about that in on the info sheet. So again, just keep in mind what the height range looks like as far as the width, how wide the crown is going to grow. And we'll talk about how to site by using that as well as the light range or light tolerance range. All right. So I think I'm good with that. I'm going to stop sharing, and Adam, you can get the presentation back. There we go. Okay. So we're just going to talk a little bit about how to help you select a tree for your site or trees. I mean, we've got the ability to provide up to 3 trees to probably everybody that's going to participate in this. So we do encourage you to give us your preferences on that, multiple preferences. So it's important to know by looking at those mature size, making sure you do have the space. Just do you have the space on your property for something that any of these, and then where. The soil and drainage is not as critical for many of those trees because they are quite adaptable. But we probably would want to look more at sun exposure, making sure that you do have enough sun for most of those instead of a deep shade. And we'll talk about that as well. There are some distances, guidelines on distances from the house, especially when you look at the width of a tree, making sure that I think it's at least 10 feet from the house. Of course, these are to be planted on your property, not in the street. But if there are utilities and just from the street, for especially if you're on a corner, there's a site visibility triangle that too is important to keep in mind. Um, and we'll talk about how to do that. Um, and then do you want to do the evergreen and get the high value or the deciduous, which provides those other features? So again, here are the 5 neighborhoods that we're going to be working with. And I wanted to just put this map up because I wanted to talk a little bit about orientation of your lot. So north is at the top, south is at the bottom of this map, west is toward the water, and east is toward the mountains. So you can see how streets are not all north, south, east, west. Lettered streets, they're angled. There's parts within probably all these neighborhoods where there are some angles. So what I often want people to think about is like, where on your lot does the sun rise? And mostly let's like in spring to fall. What's the arc of the sun? So when it rises in the east, how is it casting sun on your property? And then what is its arc as it's setting in the west toward over the water? So kind of have a feel for what that looks like, or if you're cognizant of that, because that will also help you figure out then, if we go to the next slide, we talk about then with where your lot, how your lot is laid out, how is this arc of the sun being impacted by your house, by your neighbor's house, by other trees, especially in the location where you want to actually consider planting this tree or trees. So that's the one thing that I wanted to make sure is that you just know that get the orientation by compass, because that will help you figure out where your sun, how the sun arcs over your property. So when we're also talking, because we're going to continue on this about the placement, that not only that's the orientation of your lot, and whether you're going to be in the front yard or the backyard, it's really good to consider the layout of your lot. Like, where is your house? Do you have landscaped areas where you're going to be planting the tree, or is this tree going to be in the middle of the front yard? Is it going to be in the backyard? Those are the kinds of things that I think is really important for you to just kind of dwell on and think what would be the best place to put these trees. And with that layout in mind, this will be really helpful for you when you do call, because this is required that everyone calls before you dig, and that's the 811 number, in order to make sure that this is where you're going to be planting is safely away from utilities. So again, I just talked about the orientation of the lot. Some of the neighborhoods do have slope or aspect. It's not a very significant impact, but just notice that, and especially if you're going to need to plant on a slope, it might be a little bit more of a challenge just to make sure that you can hold the soil and the water once you've completed planting. As we were saying, so go back to that tree list and you see those dimensions. And so keeping those in mind, and just kind of maybe even pace off. If says it's 30 feet wide, then it means it's going to be 15 feet one way and 15 feet the other. and seeing what is going to be hit or what's going to be a conflict. The recommended distances from the street and the buildings, I believe that that is in the pledge as well. So you can look at that to see what the actual distances are to make sure that it's kosher with the city. And then the growing conditions. So this is when now that you're thinking about a location on your lot, then it's like a good idea to start thinking about what happens in that particular, what's the microclimate of that particular site. So take notice, especially like right now in the winter. Did the snow melt or is it still very frosty? So that's going to tell you a little bit about the growing conditions. And if it rains a lot, do you see standing water? Are there puddles? Are there, within the soil, you can see it's saturated and it's not percolating. So that's going to be important to know whether you're going to be putting in the right tree because of that can withstand that, like the Sitka spruce would probably love it if you have the space. If you start poking around and you find that it's just very compacted or very rocky and it's very hard to dig, then that might not be the best spot because it's going to be very slow drainage and it might not provide the best growing condition for these particular trees. And then, as I said, when you're standing at the site you're thinking of, where are all the potential shadows that might be happening as the seasons go by that would impact the growth of the tree. So now that we've just kind of touched on the selection, I'm going to go over the planting, just what it takes to do the planting, because we are going to be having you pick up your tree, and then it's going to be on your own as to making sure that it's planted properly, and then what is the aftercare. But we have lots of tips and tools to help you along the way. Ooh, and Annika's putting stuff there. So I find it's always good to have a checklist, and this is the planning at the day of your planting. So just to make sure, make sure that you did call before you dig. So do that at least 2 days prior. That's what they require. So make sure you've done that. Then when you know where you're going to plant the trees, have them marked or identified so that whoever's going to help you, or that that will be identified. So putting that plan that you have in your head as far as like where these trees are going to be, put those, mark the planting site so everyone knows where to plant. We do ask that you just plan to plant your tree right after you receive it. It doesn't help it to be in that container any longer. We need to get the trees in the ground. It's going to be March. It's starting to be spring. We need them in the ground so that they can start acclimating and growing within your soil. So in this picture, you see this happy person has 2 of the most important, well, 3. One is using a pointed shovel as opposed to a flat one, a flat edge shovel, pointed shovel. It's used for digging. So do that. This person also has gloves. We highly recommend those. You might need knife or pruners. Probably pruners would be a little bit easier, and that's to work with the root system. But you may or may not need that. But the third thing that this person has is a smile, which is really important. We also have here on the checklist a 5-gallon bucket with mulch. Good news is we're providing that 5-gallon bucket and the mulch. So that does come with your trees when you pick them up. one per tree. So that will be nice. And then we just ask that you have the trees and all ready to go. They're in their pots next to the area. And just remember to handle them with care. Don't pull them or carry them from the stem. These are going to be small pots. They're yeah, I'll talk about that right in next. And then again, make sure you got planters to help you plant the trees. Always nice to give them treats too, if it's more than just you. Well, give yourself a treat too. So now it's time to start thinking about starting the planting process. So it's digging the hole. And we have a guideline as far as how big and deep the hole should be. But what's important is when you start digging the hole, just keep the soil, that soil that was in the hole, not in a pile right next to your hole area. So there's that. And then again, if you found that you were not aware that the soil was really hard to work on, then you may need to adjust the location of where that tree is going to go, because again, that's a sign that the soil is compact and there's poor drainage, and it's just much more work for you, and you probably will need to dig a bigger hole to make sure that there's loose soil available for the tree. So you need to dig the hole at least, need it wide. The wider the better. And we have here at least 2 times the width of the container. So for all of the trees that we have on our list, except for one, are 2-gallon pots. They'll be coming in 2-gallon pots, which the dimensions of those is 9 inches by 9 inches. So that 2 times that is basically 1.5 feet. All right. If you go big, if you go 2, all the better, because again, you're prepping the soil because you're going to be putting the soil back in, but you're prepping the site for the root growth. So the more you loosen up by digging it out, the better. Then you can take the container, the pot that the tree is in, and just put it in the hole to see where we have here, dig a little bit more than the height of the container. At the height is nice too. It's because the root system is not going to be at the bottom of the pot, but it may. So we like to say we want to make sure that the soil at the bottom is loose or it's been worked, and then we'll tamp it down before we actually plant it, so it's a steady height. But that's a good guide, is to dig a little more than the height of the container itself. Once the hole size is achieved, then it's important to what we call scarify, or just kind of loosen the sides of that. Oftentimes when we're shoveling, we create this sheared effect along the side, and that's actually where roots cannot penetrate that. So that's what we just want to make sure, that you kind of loosen the soil around the edge of the hole. And then to determine the soil level, the ultimate soil level, is that you can put the container, the pot, in the middle of it. And then what I use is the shovel's handle, and I put it across the hole, and the crown, the root crown, not the soil level, but the root crown that's exposed, should be right at the height of the hole itself. So that's a great marker, is to just put the shovel handle across the hole and make sure that the root crown is hitting it at that level. And then once you've got that figured out, go ahead and then tamp down the soil that's underneath that pot and the root ball, and recheck the level, make sure it hasn't gotten down too far. Then planting your tree. obvious. Remove the tree from the container. And when you do that, you'll see in the next bullet is that what you want to do is look at the roots, see if there are any circling roots on the edge. Sometimes this nursery stock has been growing in that one container and they have not upsized it. So if there are circling roots, so you'll see them, they'll just be like, you can see them extending and they've hit the side of the pot. Go ahead and loosen it by hand at first. And if it's really tight, and hopefully we won't have that, then that's where you can use the pruners or a knife to just kind of cut it free so that they're starting to orient out rather than around, because girdling roots is not a good setup. If you don't see any visible roots, then just go ahead and know that they're in there. And so be very gentle, but loosen the soil so that there's, again, freedom from the shape of the pot. Then place it on top of the mound. Again, measuring to make sure that that crown, the top of the root crown is exposed and it's right at the same level as the hole. And then you start backfilling it with the dug soil that you just did to create the hole. And don't add compost or amended soil. The best that research has shown that it's just using what we call the country soil. I don't know what we call it, but just using the soil that the rest of the site is growing in is the best instead of trying to amend it. So best to just keep it with that. And then once you've got enough in there, you can tamp it down around the tree along the way. Make sure the tree is standing straight. And then the final thing, once you've got it filled, best thing to do is to create a little small berm or a little dam around at the edge of the prepped area. And that's to help you with the watering because you're creating a little detention pond of sorts. And fortunately, these trees, again, most of them are in 2 gallons. They are small enough that they don't need any staking, so you should be fine. I said that most of them are 2 gallon, all of them are 2 gallons except for the cedars. So here's a plug. The cedars, we were able to get 5-gallon, 5-gallon size trees there. And 5-gallon pot would be, it's 1 foot. They must have got this figured out, but it's pretty much 1 foot by 1 foot. So your width of your hole needs to be, 6 inches on each side, right? Yeah, to be 2 feet. But I always say more is better in that situation. So aftercare. This is by far the most important thing to do is you just got to remember to water your tree. And it's part of your pledge of taking these trees is that you're going to water them. We recommend at least 5 gallons a week during the dry summer months. June is not usually a dry, hot summer month, but we tend to see you at least July into September is what we would like to do. We would like to see happen. And at least for 2 years. 3 years would be better, but we understand that life happens and that sort of thing. But 2 years will help it really get established and acclimated, and hopefully we'll be able to grow from there on out. One thing we forgot was the mulch. Was the mulch on the past? Was that on the past slide?
I suppose not, but yeah, the mulch is there, and you probably want to use that before you start using the bucket for anything.
That's right. So, okay. So we do, like I told you, we do provide the 5-gallon bucket with mulch. And So after you've created the berm uh, around the edge of the hole, we want you to then, put the mulch in. Um, and uh, fortunately, I think there's going to be enough to make it at least a 2-inch depth of mulch all the way around the tree within that berm area. And just make sure that you don't bury the tree stem, the tree, trunk with the mulch. So make sure it's pulled away. But I think we've provided enough mulch in that 5 gallon for you to be able to mulch. So that's an important thing we want to make sure people understand is that's the mulch is to be put on right at time of planting. Sorry about that omission. So the the nice thing that the cool thing is that we are providing you this wonderful watering system with that 5 gallon bucket that transported the mulch because we're going to be putting in several holes at the bottom of the bucket. So it will provide for like a slow draining system that will nicely percolate into the area around the tree. So all you need to do is fill that bucket with water and place it adjacent to the tree. If you can see the next bullet, the nice thing would be to do, and it makes it pretty easy, is then just rotate the location of that bucket each week. So like for the month, it's on one side, it's on the east side. Next week, it's in the south, whatever. It doesn't matter which way, but just changing the location of that bucket after each week and makes it for even watering. If you see that the water is just wicking up and it's not soaking in, it's important maybe then take the hose to break that tension by wetting that surface so that it can easily go through. So do that before you start trying to water with the bucket. And then as far as other aftercare, it really is not, the trees don't need any pruning. It's best to just keep them in the format and in the form that they are when we give them to you. But if you do break any branches, don't tear them off. Instead, use really sharp pruners to just cut off that damaged part and then let the tree take care of itself. So as we said, there is going to be, we do provide technical assistance. I'm available even after all this and you still don't know where to site your trees or which trees would be best. We will make sure if you reach out to us, and I think they do that on the form. Is that true? It's on the form for this technical assistance. So just indicate that on the form that you need assistance and I will follow up with you and we'll get that order in by the end of the month, which is when the orders need to be in, as well as the location. So there's that. And if you need physical assistance, whether it's for the pickup of the tree, as well as planting the tree, we will also provide that, and that is also a request that you can put on the form, the request form.
And
Is
just to
that
chime
right?
in for a minute, so that is all on the form, like Elizabeth said. But if you've already completed the form, and then now after seeing this webinar, you have questions, or later on when you're thinking about your site, just reach out to the Conservation District at the email address you'll see, or phone number shortly in the next slide, I believe.
I think
Yes,
so.
yeah, you will. In fact, you'll see it right now. Yes, if you have any assistance needs with the sign up process, navigating that form, feel free to reach out to myself at the email and phone number listed here. As well, if you happen to need any translation or interpretation services to Spanish, si necesita ayuda con proyecto y el proceso de registración, tengo la capacidad para traducir o interpretar la forma. And yeah, feel free to reach out and we'll help you in any way we can. And also, since I do work for the Whatcom Conservation District, I should give the shameless plug that a great way to support the native plants that you are planting is to plant more native plants around them. We do have a native plant sale coming up on March 15th at Pioneer Park in Ferndale. It's a great chance to get low cost native plants, particularly the small ones that'll help the understory around these larger plants that you'll be planting. And without further ado, we are at the questions page. Thank you so much for holding tight and getting all of this information from us. We really hope that you take us up on this offer for free trees. And now, if you have any questions, I'd love to open the floor. I'm going to open up the chat. Um, and
And if I may, I just want to say real quickly, so you need to submit the form by the end of this month, February.
mhm,
And that's the eligible period to receive the trees. And then the actual giveaway events will be in March.
mhm. Yes, Elizabeth or Michael, could you speak to watering through the winter and what requirements there are for that?
Uh, so even for so the deciduous trees, they are dormant. So there is really no need to water them. They will get plenty of moisture from from our rains, our winter rains, even with the snow and that sort of thing. So no need to worry about watering in the winter months. If you find that you go out, I mean, it's really a great excuse to go and check out your landscape by checking out your tree. And if the soil is dry around that tree, then water it. But if it's going to be freezing or such, that might be a little bit tough. So, but there's enough rains that happen that it should have plenty of watering.
Fabulous. Are there any more questions that happen to be coming through? Well, if anything happens to come up in the interim, as the process continues, as you fill out the form, as you receive your trees, please do not hesitate to reach out. I want to reiterate because my number did change recently, that my office extension at 360-526-2381 is 133. And yeah. Thank you so much. And we look forward to
Yeah.
seeing you out there and seeing, oh, yes, Elizabeth.
Oh, I just wanted to say too that if anyone is watching this because they didn't know what they wanted to select, um, there will be, but you've completed or you've started the registration or the application or whatever we're calling it, the request. Um, then you'll be able to do a short form. Is that correct, Michael? A short form will be available um, for you to then take it from whatever and not have to enter all your information again if you've started the process, the form. It's like the short form will be available for you to select your trees and select many, select 3.
Yeah, go for it. Assuming you have
Go for
space
it.
and you have a place for them. It's important that you have space and you have a place for them. But thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time on a weekday evening, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.